Greetings, family. This is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, and I am the founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. So, these days, this is what my procrastination looks like. Whenever I have a task or a feat before me that seems insurmountable, or overwhelming, my default is procrastination. So at least they're healthy, progressive, beneficial procrastinations. That's what I'm doing today. So for quite some time, I have been threatening to read another book live online. So just a little housekeeping before we dig in. I am streaming live from StreamYard and on IG. I have a favor to ask. If you are tuning in through Facebook or through IG, my favor to ask is that you would go to my YouTube page. I know why my band is so weak, but go to my YouTube page and tune in from there, because I need to get my watch hours up. I need to get my likes up, and I need to get my subscriptions up. So like, follow, subscribe on YouTube, preferably watch there so I can get my watch hours up. And my YouTube is at Daughter of the Fates. So at Daughter of the Fates, Fates. So that's really the only housekeeping. Donate, contribute. Everything that I'm doing is to build the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, which is a 501c3. You can see scrolling along the bottom of the screen, if you are tuning in via YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, you can see at the bottom of the screen all the different ways that you can contribute. So you can contribute through Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, or Zelle. Your donations are tax deductible. Also, it tells you across the bottom of the screen all the different ways that you can support my channels, TikTok, YouTube, and the like. And so that's it for the housekeeping. So today I am going to start reading a book that's a pretty short book. So I'll just go into it until I feel tired. The last book that I read online, if people want to go back to my YouTube channel and check that out, was Communion: The Female Search for Love by Bell Hooks. Regardless of the title, The Female Search for Love, this book is literally for everyone. There are chapters in here that will blow your mind if you're a man. There are chapters in here that will blow your mind if you're gender nonconforming, if you're LGBTQIA+, doesn't matter. This book is the jam. And if you're a mother, if you've never had children, this book is for you. This book is for everyone. It's a really, really great read. I just finished reading that last week. So you can check that out on my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to start reading a book that I've been really intimidated by and really reluctant to dig into that deep because it's intimidating. However, it is a banger. This book is The Wonderful, Magnanimous, The Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, and the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church, authored by Mama Zogbe. So this is what we're going to get into today. It's some deep, wormhole deep stuff. And that's all I got to say about that. There's another subtitle on the inside: Demystifying the Absence of the African Ancestress. Ooh. And the first divine prophetess on earth. Hey. Okay, so anyway. Baby. All right. So I'm going to read everything. I'm going to read the intro and the foreword and all of it. Page 1. Vatican, which is giving the breakdown of the word Vatican and its Hebrew definition. Vatican means divining serpent, derived from vatis, vatis, which equals diviner, and can, which means serpent. Vatican City and St. Peter's Basilica were built on the ancient pagan site called in Latin Vaticanus Mons or Vaticanus Coli, which means hill or mountain of prophecy. The Hebrew definition, vatic or vatis, vates, is a seer, a prophet, a soothsayer, diviner, and divination. A soothsayer, to act covertly, to use hidden arts, i.e., magic, to practice sorceries or mysteries. Diviner means witchcraft, tells fortune teller, bewitch, to consult a spirit of the dead, to practice magic. From the Nile to the Libyan Sea. Let's see. So I'm going to show you guys something because some of the stuff that I read will sound a little bit disjointed because one of this elder's writing style, and two, because throughout the book, which I encourage you to get for those that are just tuning in again, I am reading the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, and the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church, authored by Mama Zogbe. I encourage you to get this book. And so the reason it will sound somewhat disjointed is throughout the book, she has paragraphs that are specific. Man, it is so weird when these things like function backwards. Anyway, so she has descriptions under significant pictures. She has extended text about each picture. I don't know if I'm going to be showing y'all all of that. I'm just going to read what it says and encourage you to get the book and maybe follow along. Anyway, greetings, Saria. So anyway, all right. So Munster's Geographia 14, the 1540 edition map showing the real ancient Babylon located in southern Egypt. In the upper right hand of the map, Babylon in Egypt has now been removed from modern maps. Munster, a linguist and mathematician who initially taught Hebrew in Heidelberg, is generally regarded as one of the three most important map makers of the 16th century. Justin tells the Greeks that they may find the true religion in the ancient Babylonian Sibyl, who came to Cuma and there gave her oracles, which Plato admired as divine. Clemens Romanus also quotes the Sibyls in his epistle to the Corinthians. They are also quoted by Theophilus, Antosinus, Athenagoras, Firminius, Lactanitus, Eusebius, and St. Augustine and Florares. And this is quoted from Geoffrey Higgins, Anacolpus, page 747. Whew, this is gonna be a challenge. Anyway, so here is another picture of what is a depiction of an African Sibyl. It's not surprising that the Sicilian terracottas, which we have seen, embrace so large a field of Oriental, East African, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman mythology, should also contain illustrations of auricular beings and virgin pagan prophetesses who played an important part in the rise of Christianity, whose books were largely used by the ancient fathers of the church against the pagans and whose prophecies did not fall before the light of a new religion for nearly 4 centuries after the advent of Jesus. That is a quote by William Burkhart Barker. What's up, Abasi? All right, so this is the foreword. And I'll read like the subheading. So, thinking outside the Western patriarchal box. The idea that African religious traditions, ritual practices, social customs, divine prophecy, and fundamental beliefs once dominated both secular and dominated both the secular and non-secular world in ancient times seems hard to imagine. Even more, the notion that African women, the oldest human beings on the planet, laid the theological foundation for Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam under the auspices of the Black matriarchs seems even more incredible. Considering the current status of African women around the world, one could hardly be convinced that her matriarchal presence and the enormous influence she wielded in the ancient world had far exceeded the limited physical, cultural, geographical, and political designations of which Africa and her religions are confined today. One could hardly imagine, too, that African religions had reached the very high levels of theological and ritual development, and that they were the original home of the world's first great oracles, prophetesses, and prophets. The absence of African women in world history as major players, as opposed to exceptions to the norm, are mere appendages of great men, has been problematic and disturbing at best. For the first time, her story is being unearthed, revealed, and told. First prophetesses in the world. The first prophets of Mami Wata were African women. They were called the Sibyls, meaning that they were Mami Wata Mami Wata priestesses and priests of the osunus. The more advanced of this matriarchal divine order are known as the Amagances. In West Africa today, so I'm gonna have to polish up my pronunciation of ancient Greek and Roman stuff, but bear with me. They can call up the dead and even the souls of the living. They were the ancient oracle used in ancient Greece, Rome, and Babylon. Their prophecies are the oldest in the world. It is through the divine blood of these Sibyl prophetesses. It is through the divine blood of these Sibyl priestesses that the patriarchal kingships of the pharaohs, the Hebrew prophets, and the Chaldean priests were born. The great Sibyls, divine oracles of the ancestors and of God. Webster's dictionary defines a Sibyl as a female prophet or a woman able to utter the oracles and prophecies of a god, or a woman who can foretell the future. Conversely, under the bitter Hebrew patriarchs, the Sibyls are condemned in their Bible as Behaleth Ob, meaning evil serpent spirit, or mistress of the Python. Sibyl, black doves, originally Holy Spirit. Universally known as the black doves, the Sibyls refer to themselves as the sisters of Isis, and sometimes prophetesses of the Black Diana. The doves symbolize the sacred soul or Holy Spirit, an Afro-mystical symbol later adopted by Christians. It was the Sibyls, matriarchal groups who settled at the Asia Minor, ancient Turkey, and installed Mami's worship more than 2,500 years before the Doric, Greek, and Turk invasions. Mami, whom they knew as Laocoon with her serpents, was known as the manifestation of the divine logos, with holy temples scattered all throughout Asia Minor, Cushitic, Mitanni Empire, and the Minoan and Macedonian or Aegean islands. Archaeological pottery shards date back. Archaeological pottery shards date the Black descendants of the Libyan, Garamantes, present-day Ewe, Aladas, Ga, Andangbe, and other African clans who had settled into ancient Babylon and elsewhere before the flood, to have arrived in Manoa, Ionia, as early as 4000 BC. Hailed as one of the 7 wonders of the world, these sacred temples were maintained by the Sibyls, and a contingent of Vestal virgin priestesses and eunuchs. Vatican, original sacerdotal seat of the Sibyls. Africans, Black Buddhist Umbrians, and Black Etruscans erected civilizations in what is now Italy, thousands of years before Anglo-Romans arrived. What is now called the seat of the Vatican in Italy was originally the sacerdotal seat of the ancient Black Sibyls. As the first established sacerdotal African matriarchs, the Sibyls' culture and religious impact was arguably the most profound on ancient civilization than modern history has ever revealed or cared to admit. From Mesopotamia to Libya, Mizraim, Kemet / Egypt, Ionia, Manoa, Peloponnese, Turkey, Mycenae, Greece, and later Rome, the Sibyls were the primary divine Vatican and the absolute moral authority. For centuries, the Grecian islands at Delos, Dodona, Delphi, and the Temple of Mami in ancient Libya were the ecclesiastical and moral hub of religious, social, international political activity. It was under the theocratic governance of the Sibyls as queen mothers that African matriarchal culture reached its golden age of achievement in medicine, religion, astronomy, philosophy, law, architecture, music, art, and social sophistication. Sibyls heal sick, raise dead long before Christ. As the sole spiritual authority in the ancient world, the Sibyls were famous for uttering warnings and admonitions to the villages, cities, and ancient kingdoms, including their leaders, prophesying their doom or fulfilling their hopes and restoring lost glory. They'd right moral wrongs and punish offenders of the divine law. Centuries before Christ, they were known to heal the sick, restore dignity and strength to the weak, and sight to the blind. They were famous for curing lameness, epileptics, deaf mutes, and lepers. They were said to cast out demons and even to raise up the dead. This last reference is probably meant to call up and materialize the spirit of a dead person. For example, a Sibyl named Hierophile, residing in Cumaean, Rome, was famed for calling up the spirit of the apostle Samuel from the dead. Sibyl's divine oracle basis for Western Bible. However, the Sibyls' most significant contribution were their famous oracles containing the divine prophecies that they would utter in trance possession. These prophecies would be carefully written down by their assistants and compiled into books. These prophetic poses were the basis for Greek and Roman tragedies and plays. These prophetic books were later collected by the Roman authorities and soon became the sole and undisputed precursor to the Western Christian Bible, and would later lay the ecclesiastical foundation of Western civilization itself. Over the millenniums, other Sibyl prophecies, oracles, and revelations were systematically retrieved and purchased, stolen, or haphazardly collected by various means, all throughout the ancient world where their temples existed. It was these books that would later be plagiarized, revised, or altered, and compiled into one holy book known as the Sibylline Oracles. They would later become the center of the bitter doctrinal or heresy wars between the warring Levitical Jews and the emerging Roman Vatican authority. As the African matriarchal power began to decline and her colonies taken over by foreign conquerors, it was the thrones and sacerdotal power and prophecies of the Sibyls that was stolen from them by the emerging Roman Church. Their religions were later labeled as pagan or heathen under a now racialist Roman authority. The emerging Roman Church, in their ignorance and ambition, acquired and doctored the Levite Jews as corrupted versions of the Sibyl prophecies, until one could hardly distinguish one forgery from the other. Some of these prophetic books were used by the Vatican to compile what is known today as the Judeo-Christian Bible, baby, crediting their authorship to conspicuous Roman and other male prophets. Those books for which it was hard to conceal their African matriarchal origins were simply destroyed or relegated to heresy. The gender of God, originally female. The gender of God was later changed from feminine to masculine. Originally within the prophetic verse, it is claimed that the Sibyls made praises to Mami or as Our Lady and proclaimed that she was greater than any other god in the world. Roman Senator Cicero, the orator, writes that the last three books of the Sibyl Hierophile were deliberately burned in a fire by the Roman governor Stilicon the tyrant. Stilicon was eternally hated by all of Rome for this sacrilegious act, which prompted a universal reaction from poets, scholars, musicians alike. So worshipped was this Sibyl of Cumaea that she was immortalized by all of Rome in one of her appellations, Europa, for which Europe is allegedly named. Sibyl's groups, original persecuted ones. It was this African traditional religionist groups and not the so-called Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved. It was the Sibyls' style of prophecy and magic that would later be imitated by a militant faction from these patriarchal Levitical groups whom, envious of her global positioning, rebelled the divine matriarchal orders and seized their temples and overthrew their priestesshoods. In their jealousy, hatred, and rebellion of her divine authority, the Levitical Jews elevated their original minor deity, Jehovah, as an insult to her. Together, Jehovah and his patriarchal clan usurped her sacerdotal and secular power, and from that moment on, they have worn it as their own. Millions of her people were murdered or enslaved, and millions scattered to the four winds all across the world. The historical evidence that shows it was these groups and not the Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved. The New Testament is actually a historic chronicle of the final destruction of all remnants of the African matriarchal authority. Books that were politically and not divinely inspired, which is books that were politically and not divinely inspired which is why the Levitical Jews, enemies of the Roman Church, refused to recognize them as authentic. Sibyl traditions live on in West Africa. The history of the Sibyls is not entirely dead. In West Africa, there lives a matriarchal order of women who call up the dead. Many lineages of these women were also sold into slavery in America. Many Black women are born not knowing that their suffering stems from their disconnection with their ancient rights and spiritual duty to continue the work of their ancient mothers. The suppression of the ancient history of the African matriarchs and their contribution to world religion, magic, spirituality, and prophecy is one of the greatest cover-ups and divine tragedies in human history. The author remains convinced that until this history is restored and African women are accorded their rightful place in the world, there will probably never be any peace on earth. Mama Zogbe. So that is the foreword. The Sibyls, this is chapter 1. The Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, demystifying the absence of the African ancestress as the first divine prophetess on earth. And then they show a little picture, the same picture that's on the cover of the book. Above is a medieval Roman catacomb illustrating a Mami Sibyl priestess reposed against the sacred ark, which Faye, ancestral oracle. It is topped with an agbandoto, first fruits offering to Mami Wata. The Faye is laced with a garland of mistletoe sacred to the African thunder god Zeus, Asclepius, Dionysus, Bacchus. Resting in her hand is Asclepius, the African ancestral auricular serpent. This writing is extraordinarily tiny. Emanating around her head is the golden nimbus halo, a pre-Christian solar symbol representing her muse or avatar status. The feminine word rada, muse, rada, muse, masculine, Moses, is the exact same equivalent as Messiah, Savior, meaning bearers of divine truth and light. Additionally, the word mago is the feminine counterpart to the masculine word magi, meaning masters of divine spirit and esoteric knowledge. The use of mermaid imagery in the Mami Wata voodoo tradition has been a dominant feature since the beginning of time. The oldest representations of Isis, Mami, Atargatis, Awusa, Dinsu, Ishtar, were that of a serpent, fish, and mermaid. During ancient times, African and Afro-Elamite matriarchal religions reached high levels of civilization, and its architecture, sacerdotal rites, elaborate vestments, and orgiastic possessions and celebrations covered the entire ancient world. They dominated the religious, political, and popular cultures of colonial and classical Greece and Rome. The prophecies and wisdom of the Sibyls and other African esoteric priesthoods were central to Christianity's ecclesiastical development and the Levitical Judaism's survival. After the militaristic defeat and decline of African patriarchal world hegemony, the Roman Church began to emerge as an imperialist inquisitorial power. They then exploited and plagiarized the Sibyl prophecies and usurped their sacred rights and the Vatican seat of divine power in Italy. They credited their prophetic works to obscure white males whom they labeled as prophets and saints. Oh my God, prophets and saints. They then waged holy war against the Sibyls, later accusing them of Tarian black heathenism. Tarian black heathenism. The Roman catacombs became the burial mausoleums for many of these persecuted and murdered African martyrs. The Sibyls and others were buried by their followers in these dark, musty tombs, their beloved emerging late at night to offer food, drink, prayer, and song. The use of undergrounds and ancient Egyptian and Afro-Chaldean religious custom can be likened to the slave survival practices in America. They are an important historical glimpse into the socio-religious and political world of the Afro-Greco-Romans as they fought for their religious and cultural survival. That is via Latina Rome 361 to 363 CE. Okay, let's see what my time is looking like. Okay, good. In 1935, an important cultural undertaking was instituted to document and to preserve Afro-medicinal spiritual folklore and religious practices in America. This monumental task was instituted by the Alma Agan Hyatt Foundation of New York under the auspices of an Episcopal priest by the name of Harry Middleton Hyatt from Quincy, Illinois. Mr. Hyatt traveled across the mainly southern United States, interviewing hundreds of ex-enslaved African American priestesses and priests and their descendants. He transcribed to ediphones their folklore, folk medicine, and religious practices, many of whom, in spite of violent suppression and persecution, still practiced remnants of the religious traditions of their ancient African ancestors. The more than 1,600 women and men practitioners interviewed by Mr. Hyatt, anxious to help document and preserve their important religious culture, volunteered to contribute to this historic archival study. What is interesting to note is that during the course of these interviews, nearly all of the women and an impressive number of the men declared that the strongest conviction that they were indeed true prophets, prophetesses, and doctors. Commenting on this and the esoteric nature of Black folk cosmogony, Hyatt remarked, quote, what type of thought am I trying to bring above ground where it can be studied is a continuation of a mental phenomenon centuries old, the syncretism of magical rites, pseudo-science, and religion. We could call it underground Gnosticism, end quote. A great many of those interviewed claimed that they were prophetesses or prophets because the spirits called them, or because their mothers or fathers came from a blood lineage of two-headed people, or because they were simply born that way. It's in the blood. Now, one might wrongly conclude upon first observation that since it was illegal for enslaved Africans to either read or write, such bold proclamations could only be due to their, quote, Christian conditioning. The only good thing being Christianized, the only good thing they were taught that resulted from the 150 years of chattel slavery and then Jim Crow segregation. However, a closer examination might reveal that many in the diaspora may very well have been descendants of the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami, and the original goddess, whose history has been lost, stolen, deliberately culturally disguised, obscured, and Europeanized beyond recognition in the contemporary faiths of today. However, with an increasing number of African Americans finding no solace in today's scandal-ridden, unfilling Western faiths, desire to learn the true history of their ancient ancestral religions that once dominated the world. Therefore, the time is now that their story be told. Before there was Jehovah, a minor volcano fire thunder deity elevated as God under Afro-Ephraim Jewish patriarchy, there was Mami, Isis, as the preeminent dual goddess and god who dominated the entire ancient world. For more than 6,000 years, nearly all of Africa was matriarchal. The dominant presence of African matriarchy resulted not as a consequence of political, feminist, or military usurpation, but rather because it was the original and, more importantly, the natural divine order of the African civilized world. Its cosmology, philosophy, theology, ritual practices, and rich African culture emphasize the complementary relationship between what has come to be known as the masculine and the feminine divine, as it exists in both nature and within the universe. What passes for a traditional African culture today, where women have been subdued. Ooh, come on, tell the truth, right? Oh my God, let's get in it. What passes today for, quote, traditional African culture today where women have been subdued and relegated to marginal roles in African political and religious life, is the result of the patriarchal usurpation of the older matriarchal orders upon whom the patriarch sought to contain and to control her divine powers and political and economic influence in the world. However, hidden beneath this patriarchal substratum of modern day Africa, one will discover that it was under African matriarchy which birthed African, ancient, and Mediterranean culture and high civilization. The first prophets of Mami were African women. They were called Sibyls, meaning that they were Mami Wata's priestesses and priests of the Oans. Their prophecies are the oldest in the world. It is through the divine blood of these Sibyl priestesses that the patriarchal kingships of the pharaohs, the Hebrew prophets, and the Chaldean priests were born. It was the Sibyl style of prophecy and magic that would later be imitated by the militant factions from these groups who, envious of her global positioning, rebelled against these matriarchal orders and seized their temples and overthrew their priesthood as patriarchy began to dominate. In their jealousy, hatred, and rebellion of her divine authority, the Levitical Jews elevated their original minor deity, Jehovah, as an insult to her. Together, Jehovah and his patriarchal clan usurped her sacerdotal power and secular power. And from that moment on, they have worn it as their own. They did not create new logos. They simply corrupted and repackaged the original as laid forth by the divine African mother. For those that are joining late, I am reading the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, and the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church, written by Mama Zogbe. To conceal their crimes, they destroyed and defiled her name and all of her temples. They murdered and accused her prophetesses and prophets of heresy and witchcraft, and disguised her sacred rites and divine legacy as their own. Baby. This trend of random destruction they continued so that the world would never again know or honor her as the divine African mother. Since their unauthorized acquisition of her divine authority, there has been little peace in the world. Yo, oh my God. I didn't know we was going to church today, y'all. Listen. Since their unauthorized acquisition of her divine authority, there has been little peace in the world because they have demonized the voice of her prophetesses and continue to enslave and oppress her prophets and people. There has been no divine prophecy. All that remains are hopeless corruptions of her original logos and weak imitators such as Nostradamus of her divine prophetic style, a style originally developed by the Sibyls and those of her sacred priesthoods. Woo! The Jews, whom after the 5th century BCE could neither speak nor understand Hebrew, nor the ancient esoteric philosophy of Mami, attempted to decipher the original cuneiform tablets of the Black Canaanites and that predate the Hebrew language. Their crude translations deliberately corrupted many of the ancient names of the Black goddesses and changed the original esoteric meanings of their prophecies to what exists now in the Torah and in the Pentateuch. Oh my God. Oh. These now corrupted and worn scripture doctrines, mass-produced and distributed now in the Judeo-Christian Bible, have been the cause of untold human suffering, massive spiritual ignorance, spiritual suffering, and devastating wars. This was especially the case between those rebellious sons of the patriarchal Afro-Pharaonic orders who themselves oh my gosh, who themselves were overthrown and robbed of their secular hegemony by their illegitimate offspring, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Oh my God. Though all latecomers in this very ancient and divine epic, their holy wars claiming original ownership of the Black goddess legacy are centuries old and are all that is allowed to remain within the human memory. Oh, the human memory. Yo, ignorant of the original logos established by the divine African mother, their present struggles to maintain the corrupted version which favors an exclusive, currently Euro-masculine patriarchal predominance are nothing more than a continuation of a centuries-old battle over which patriarchal son should control and reign over the sacerdotal power stolen from her. The most coveted prize inherent within their secular authority are the spoils of her vast empire of land and mineral resources, replete with human, carefully programmed vassals to exploit it. Oh my God. Oh my God. This sacred empire, once bequeathed to the masses, is now controlled by those who have benefited from her suspicious absence from human worship as Mami. And the continual subjugation and degradation of the people who have known and have honored her sacred rites and religious customs for centuries, rooted in what are known today as African traditional and diasporic religions. For many ATRs, African traditional religions, practitioners, for many ATR practitioners, this revelation might come as shocking and unbelievable. The idea that African religious traditions, ritual practices, social customs, divine prophecy, and fundamental beliefs once dominated both the secular and non-secular world and laid the theological foundation for Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam under the auspice of the Black matriarchs seems incredible. However, in order to understand what has just been written, it is necessary to start at some historic point in our human beginnings. The Fifth World is commenting via YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's why our hearts are reconnecting with the mind and the new thoughts. The true thoughts are coming through again outside the Saturn black box. Come on through. Come on through. That's why, listen, that's why I tell y'all all the time, I keep my nose in the Bible. Not because I believe in Christianity, but because the secrets of our folk are hidden within if we know how to read it. If we don't take the preacher word for it and we know how to dissect and read and interpret, read between the lines of that little thing right there called the Bible, the King James Version Bible, then there are secrets that speak from within those words. There's a reason that my dad, he didn't know it, but there's a reason that my father had me memorizing scripture at 5 years old. That's how I learned to read, was memorizing scripture at 5 years old, memorizing Proverbs, memorizing Psalms at 5 years old, 6 years old. You understand? She intended that. I hated it, but I did not know at 5 years old that it was purposeful, that my father was who he was, believed how he believed, and had our nose in that book that early. Anyway, I digress. But thank you for tuning in, The Fifth World, and thank you for your feedback. Yes, 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 she deserves to have all of her reverence back. Yes, that, my dear, is what the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence intends to make happen. Let's see. Clearly, the first question begs, just who are the Sibyls, and why has the world not learned of their Africanness and their primary and sacred role as the world's first prophetesses, or their major contribution to the divine history of world religions? And let's see. I'm going to show you this picture. Anytime there's pictures, I'm just going to briefly put them on the screen because I'm going to read what is below them. Again, I want to encourage everybody that is coming on late or just now, or when you're never late, you're always on time. But I'm reading The Sibyls, the First Prophetesses of Mami Wata and the Theft of African Prophecy by the Catholic Church, written by Mama Zogbe. I encourage you to get the book and yes, and read along. Okay, so I'm going to read what was below those pictures that I just showed you. The glass Carthaginian mask amulet of black Mami deity Tanit, also known as the Libyan Liberia and Astarte. Above, she is shown wearing a full beard to exemplify not her bisexuality, as is often misunderstood by Western interpreters, but her rather divine complementary nature of both the masculine and the feminine principles. In reality, the above is a modification of the divine seven serpents, seven African powers, and thus a manifestation of Tanit as the premier oracle of the first ancestral masculine sun fire deity Adama, or Bacchus. The white kaolin around her eyes and her cowrie-shaped mouth represents her ability to see and communicate in the world of the spirit. This amulet was worn by Carthaginian soldiers to protect them from death during battles, and common folk to protect against the evil eye. And then the picture on the bottom, picture on the bottom, taken from a Greek vase, is Black Libyan Athena Anath, whose worship was transported to Afro-Greece when the matriarchs fled the patriarchal takeover in ancient Egypt and Libya. She is seen sporting a beard representing not her bisexuality, but rather her totemic aspect as the ancestral black dove of divine prophecy, or ancestral oracle for the thunder god Zeus. Okay. Why were their prophecies stolen and corrupted, and their holy temples destroyed or converted into churches and mosques, where African and later all women were no longer welcomed at the helm? Why was even the mention of the black goddess's name meant sure death, or practice of her sacred rites and rituals guaranteed social ostracism, persecution, and even death? The story of the Sibyls is long and complicated because it has been so badly disguised, corrupted, and carefully hidden by Western religious historians and the Catholic Church. However, some of it has been unearthed and is now being rewritten and recounted here in its near to original African perspective for the first time. I see you, the fifth world. I see you. Because the Sibyls are still being born in the ghettos of America to the shanty villages of Africa, and because it is necessary to place African spirit within its ethnic and cultural melee, the rightful place of African women must be restored. The place of African women as the first center of sacerdotal power is not political. She did not usurp her divine providence and authority from anyone. Her place is the manifestation of the original natural order as willed through the divine logos responsible for establishing human societies, moral law, religious institutions, and sacred authority to maintain order on earth. It is hoped that in doing so, a new paradigm might be established in which the African people and the world might view the patriarchal religious orders forced upon the world as the only divine path to know their God. The first Genesis, when the goddess spoke through the African woman. This is a quote. They will say that the Sibyl, oh my God. They will say that the Sibyl is mad and deceitful, but when all things shall come to pass, then ye will remember me, and no one will any longer say that I, the prophetess of the great goddess, am mad. That was the Erythraean Sibyl of 2802 BC. That was a quote. Someplace in the beginning. The Sibyls are descendants of the first Neolithic clans of African warrior queens, healers, prophetesses, and priestesses who were on the first ship built by the goddess to establish the new world after the Great Flood. Oh my God. Patriarchal oral history only records there being men, namely Noah and his 3 racially different sons. However, this is mythical and political and not historical. These 3 sons were all African, and there were African women, high priestesses called the Sibyls, who issued forth the instructions from the divine African mother, Mami, as God, on how to build Argos, or the Ark, and the giving forth of prophecy pertaining to the end of their world as they knew it in ancient Babylon. Oral tradition also has it that when men revolted against the authority of Mami, they separated themselves from the divine African mother. In one Afro-Chaldean Reiki, ancient Babylonian account, Mami is worshipped as the goddess Aruru Ishtar, or Ishtar meaning the queen or lady, is not a proper name, but rather one of her oldest appellations. Mami is a holy honorific title denoting great reverence attributed to any African goddess, particularly those of water. As the Afro-Chaldean account goes, Ishtar, in her inconsolable grief, angered at their rebellion and betrayal of her, prophesied through one of her Sibyls the following fate that would befall her beloved African people. This is a quote. Spake Ishtar like a child, uttered the great goddess her speech. All to corruption are turned, and then I, in the presence of the gods, prophesied. And as I prophesied in the presence of the gods, evil to evil were devoted all my people. And I prophesied, I, the mother, have begotten my people, and like oh my God, and like the young of fishes, they fill the sea. The gods concerning the spirits were weeping with me. The gods in seats and seated in lamentation, covered with their lips for the coming evil. End quote. As promised for their great apostasy against her laws, she retaliated and inundated their world or nation, as they knew it, with a great and mighty flood. However, before doing so, she gathered her devoted and preserved her sacred seed inside the blood of the Sibyls, under whose divine guidance she led them and their families, along with the great elder Oannes, Noah, and his sons in the new world. It was her sacred Argos, moon crescent boat, that she guided them across the great dark mystery sea to the Aegean shores of Delos and Ionia. This is a quote. 6 days and nights passed. The wind, the deluge, storm overwhelmed. On the 7th day, in its course, was calmed. The storm and all the deluge, which had destroyed everything, like an earthquake, quieted. On the 7th day, in the course of it, I sent forth a dove, and it left. It sent the animals forth to the 4 winds. End quote. Then there's another picture of 2 black doves, and below it says, ancient Roman catacomb drawing of Sibyls as the black doves sent out by Mami Wata, or Ishtar, to test for dry land. Some accounts report that one of them returned carrying an olive branch, which is credited as being sacred to the black goddess Minerva. She is one of the 3 major serpent water deities born at Lake Triton, daughter of the Nile, or Nilus. It was the Africans and Proto-Elamites who settled at Asia Minor, ancient Turkey, and installed her worship more than 2,500 years before the Doric, Greek, and Turk invasions. The doves symbolize the sacred soul, or Holy Spirit, an Afro-mystical symbol later adopted by the Christians. That is according to St. Callistus Catacomb, Rome, that was found in St. Callistus Catacomb, Rome, in 199 to 217 BC, and Bazagal again in 1999. Those doves that were sent forth were the black doves, or the transmigrated souls of the Sibyls, whose priesthoods were already well known and long established in ancient Ethiopia, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and other ancient lands that were spared from the Great Flood. When we know this to be so because Herodotus, who actually met one of the temple Sibyl priestesses, further recounts the story directly told to him of how they arrived in their new land and established the sacred Ompe temples in Libya, at Dodona, Delphi, and Delos of the Grecian islands. He writes that at Dodona, the priestesses who delivered the oracles have a story that 2 black doves flew away from Thebes in Egypt, and one of them alighted or landed at Dodona, the other in Libya. The former perched on an oak and, speaking with a human voice, told them that there on that very spot should be an oracle of Horus or Zeus. Those who heard her understood the words to be a command from heaven and at once obeyed. The dove which flew to Libya told the Libyans to found the oracle of Amun, located at the oasis at Siwa, which is also an oracle of the thunder god Zeus. The people who gave me this information were the 3 priestesses of Dodona, Promea, the eldest, and Timarete, the next, and Nicandra, the youngest, and their account is confirmed by the Dodonians who have any connection with the temple, end quote. Other accounts differ on how they arrived to Dodona. It is said that they were in such high demand throughout the ancient world that they were often stolen from Africa, sold as slaves by Afro-Phoenicians and Carthaginians, and forced to establish their ancestral totemic oracles. On this, Herodotus concludes, quote, I think that if it be true that the Phoenicians carried off the holy women and sold them for slaves, afterwards, while undergoing servitude in those parts, she built under a real oak a temple. Then, having acquired a knowledge of the Greek tongue, she set up an oracle. She also mentioned that her sister had been sold for a slave into Libya by the same persons as herself. The Dodonians called the women doves because they were foreigners and seemed to them to make a noise like birds. After a while, the dove spoke with a human voice. By calling the dove black, the Dodonians indicated that the woman was an Egyptian. And certainly the character of the oracles at Thebes and Dodona were very similar. It seems to me a sufficient proof that in Egypt, these practices have been established from remote antiquity, while in Greece, they were only recently known, end quote. Quoting archaeologist Stecchini, when presenting his findings to the Archaeological Institute of America, Stecchini states that, quote, I maintain that the historical accounts, myths, and legends, and some monuments of Delphi indicate that the oracle was established there by the pharaohs of the Ethiopian dynasty. This is the reasons why the Greeks portrayed Delphos, the eponymous hero of Delphi, as a Negro, end quote. These written accounts are the only written records available documenting the historical existence of the Sibyls and their prophetic oracles. These historical accounts also established their existence centuries after arrival in the new lands, after their temples had already been seized and renamed, i.e. Zeus and Apollo, by the pharaonic sun thunder temple priest of Amun. More will be provided on this later. What is more important here is that the first thing the Sibyls and Ioa or Noah did was to construct an Ompe temple or shrine and make sacrifices to Mami. They installed and consecrated the sacred Ompe shrines to Mami and their minor gods. This they did in Libya and at Delos, Delphi, and Dodona. Afterwards, some of these groups settled into the Asian Minor, modern-day Turkey, and installed a shrine to Mami. Never having broken their ancestral ties with Kemet, Egypt, Nubia, Libya, Syria, and Peleshith, or Palestine, they soon developed a sophisticated trade and prospered into what would later be known as the Great Minoan and Macedonian matriarchal civilizations. It was there, legend has it, that became the new abode for their lineage of African gods. They preserved their history in poetic and prophetic prose that would later be used as the basis for Greek and Roman tragedies and plays. They would lay the ecclesiastical foundation for the collection of apocryphal books later to be modified as the Christian Bible. During ancient times, leaders customarily applied allegory and prophetic rhyme to applied allegory and prophetic rhyme to conceal as well as to commit to heart esoteric truths that were not meant for the masses. The priestesshood of the Sibyls were even more conspicuous. They were part of the divine cycle of procreation, preservation, death, and renewal, rebirth, which was believed to take place every 600/6,000 years. The above allegorical story of their arrival upon the Argos or Ark with Noah and his 3 sons after surviving the great flood or destruction is simply representative of this divine cycle. Another example would be that of the 9 muses, masculine Moses. Originating out of ancient Egypt, they were the feminine counterpart to the Messiah/Savior. Each one represented a Sibyl as the divine incarnation of the 9 cycles, Radhas, Rays, divine saviors, who had already manifested as the new Messiah of healing and prophecy, and to announce the coming end of a divine cycle. Oh. In short, the muses, Sibyls, were literally the light of divine wisdom or the divine spark of the divine African mother as Mami. They were symbolically the divine rays of truth emanating from the crowns of the masculine sun thunder gods. During times of preservation, each muse offered the gift of their specific talents, i.e., music, art, science, literature. However, during periods of cyclic renewal, one would manifest from among them, Sibyls, to become the prophetic voice of the divine African mother, Mami. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yo. I think I'm going to end there. That took an hour, and so I still got a lot to go. I'm on, for those of you who decide to buy the book, for those of you who came on late, I am reading from the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church, written by Mama Zogbe. Baby, we ain't even got in it good. I'm ending on page 24 for the night. I'll pick this back up tomorrow until we complete this walk together, which shouldn't take that long. There's only, let's see, there is only, 132 pages in the book. So very short book. I encourage you all to get it. I think I got mine less than $10. You understand what I'm saying? So again, for those tuning in late, for those who want to follow me, I'll be reading every day until we have finished the book, which should take a week. I just started today. So this is the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata, and the theft of African prophecy by the Catholic Church, baby. Written by Mama Zogbe. Let's get in it. Let's get in it. Okay. So that will be all for me this evening. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates. Thank everybody who tuned in. Yes, I see all of you who tuned in from IG and all of you who tuned in via my YouTube channel, my Twitch, and my Facebook channel. And again, maybe around this time every night, maybe this time every night after my busy day. So around 8 o'clock every night, I'll finish reading this book within the week. All right. Like, share, subscribe to all my pages. Daughter of the Fates or Cassandra Faye Floyd is how you can find all my stuff. If you're watching via YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, you should be able to see across the bottom of the screen how you can make contributions to the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence via Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, PayPal. You can always email me if you have any questions. I will answer them within reason. If you have any questions, if you're interested in a consult, I am a wellness practitioner with a focus in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and African holistic health, also a certified nutritionist. So if you are interested in a consult, you can email me at releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. If you have any questions about the reading or the book or anything like that, you can email me at the same, releaseheartcenter @gmail.com. What else? If you're interested in a reading, you can also inquire about that at releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. If you are interested in participating, joining, or more information on the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. We're currently working on the website, which is like nightmarish, you understand? But we're working on it. So in the meantime, everybody is communicating through my personal contact information, which is releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. All right, that will be all for this evening. It's Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as Daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, and I will see you again tomorrow night. Peace. Do